Welcome, and thank you for joining the channel. Please help this channel by liking and subscribing. We really appreciate it. There are no ads on this video. If you have a scary story you would like me to share on this channel, comment below and your story will be featured in a video. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy these creepy encounters with the paranormal, accompanied by rain and thunder. She binds my hands with the rope. A lot of good it will do. Is that tight enough? My perfect wife asks. Tighter. Next comes the chains. Unfortunately, they are just steel, only meant to slow me down as much as they can. Do you have any idea how expensive silver chains would be? We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. Still have to do. I'll probably break them anyway. My wife guides me into my cage in our basement. I have to tell her to stop calling it the kennel. I'm sensitive about dog jokes. She snaps shut every lock, all 20, and places the small amount of silver we do in the cage. This cage is a fortress. Should be impossible to get out of. Comfy? She asks. It's not supposed to be. The full moon will be here soon, baby. You should get upstairs and lock the door. I was thinking, not this again. Please? She gives me the puppy dog eyes. Normally I can't resist the puppy dog eyes, but on this, I won't budge. It's too dangerous. When I transform into the wolf, even the scent of you could drive me into a frenzy. A frenzy? She blushes. I just want to take a peek. That's all. Just an enzy, weaselly peek. It's kind of hot. You turn into a wolf. Hot? This is a curse. Hey, don't talk about yourself like that. You're not cursed. I love my werewolf husband. I just think it'd be something to see like that. Lizzie, promise me you'll lock the door and stay upstairs until morning. She hesitates. Not even a tiny little peek? No. She pouts all the way up the stairs and locks the door. The transformation is always somehow worse than I remember it. It starts with my nose. Suddenly it's like every smell in the house is ramming up my nostrils. Mildew, garbage. My only solace is my wife's perfume punching through the air. Then it's the needles. No. Razor blades. Like someone dragging a million razor blades all over my skin. Just when the nightmare really begins and agony consumes me, everything fades to black. The wolf takes over. And then it's over. I always wake up groggy, confused. I've managed to break the chains, but I'm still in the cage. Thank God. But something is wrong. I smell blood. No. Oh God. I look out the cage and see my wife. Scratched to hell. Pale. Blood is everywhere and she's missing her arm. She must have reached into the cage to try and pet me. Where's the arm? I look all over. Oh fuck, did I eat the arm? I gag and throw up some bile. Why didn't you listen? I scream as tears stream down my face. I pound on the locked bars in front of me. There has to be a way out. We've been studying our target for a few weeks now. According to what we heard, he was a widow who lost his wife 2 years ago. That didn't matter though. Only what his house provided inside. Eventually, the planned night came, and we silently walked to his house. It was a 2-story house that looked straight from the 1980s. As we reached the front door, Philip tried the knob just in case. To our surprise, it opened. Asshole can't even remember to lock his door. Philip laughed as we entered inside as quietly as possible. As we walked through the hallways, making sure Our footsteps were as quiet as possible. I noticed the different portraits mounted on the wall. Some were framed photographs of men, women, and children. I assumed they were probably generations of the old guy's family. Something peculiar about them, though, is that they all seemed to wear the same pitch-black pendant. Upon getting to the living room, we waited to ensure that the old guy was asleep. After a few minutes, we confirmed that the coast was clear. We set our duffel bags down and began snatching up any valuables within the living room. We grabbed and stashed everything that could fit in until Philip's eyes suddenly landed on something. I could see a sly smile sprout on his face and his eyes widened. I followed his gaze and saw what he was looking at. I marveled at the large vertical painting on the wall. It showed a woman sleeping peacefully in a field full of marigolds. She wore a white blouse and dress. Added with the yellow vest, her orange hair was neatly straightened and long despite the strands of gray hair. "This will probably be a fortune," Philip whispered and moved towards it. I was about to follow when I felt someone's eyes staring sharply at me. I turned around towards a corner of the living room, but no one was there. "Yo, Zach, are you going to help me with this thing, or what?" Philip asked. I turned to him and nodded, hiding my confusion about the sudden sensation. We both attempted to bring the painting down, but it wouldn't move, as if it was permanently stuck to the wall. "Get your filthy hands off of it," an angered and quiet voice hissed. We both jumped and turned to see him. He sat in a rocking chair, eyes closed, and in the exact corner I previously looked at. How the hell did he get there? Philip pulled out his pistol and aimed it towards him. He didn't say anything and let out a toothy smile. "Don't get too cocky with us," Philip shouted, before a dark, murky hand grabbed onto his wrist. I stared down, and my heart skipped a beat, as dozens of hands sprouted through the dark floor, clawing and grabbing onto us. And then we began to sink. When I crossed the hill and looked down into the valley, I was delighted to see the little cottage nestled amongst the snow-covered trees. The cottage, which looked like a giant-sized gingerbread house, was garnished, adored with Christmas decorations. Colorful lights ringed the roof. On the door was a huge wreath, upon which was a big red bow. Through the window, I could see a tall Christmas tree covered in shiny baubles. Parked behind it was a big red sleigh. "Found you," I declared. I unslung the rifle from my shoulder and made my way down to the cottage. When I was about 100 meters away from it, I heard footsteps crunching through the snow behind me. I whirled around and aimed my rifle. A large deer stood before me. As we stared at each other, its nose began to glow red. "Back off, Rudolph," I warned. "I don't want to hurt you, but I will if you try and stop me." Rudolph took a step towards me. I chambered around to let him know I wasn't kidding. I was a hair's breadth away from pulling the trigger when Rudolph turned and bounded away. I continued walking to the cottage, glancing over my shoulder occasionally to make sure none of the other deer tried to follow me. Even though I couldn't see them, I knew they were out watching me. I didn't bother knocking when I got to the cottage. I just stormed through the front door. "Show yourself," I demanded. A red mist floated up through the cracks of the floor and coalesced into a familiar figure. "Hello, Santa," I sneered. "Hello, Sam," he greeted me with the jolliest tone. "You know that can't hurt me." He pointed at the rifle with a smile. "This wasn't for you." I replied as I slung the rifle back over my shoulder. It was for your pets outside. I unslung the other weapon I was holding and aimed it at him. This is for you. He looked at the crossbow in my hand. The smile dropped from his face when he saw the large wooden bolt pointed at him. How did you figure it out? He asked. It wasn't really that hard, I explained. You're immortal. You're immune to the cold. You only deliver presents at night. You can fly. I rattled off the reasons. Do I need to go on? I've never hurt anyone. Santa defended what he was. All of this, he spread his arms, was designed so that I could take what I needed while doing some good in the process. I haven't killed anyone for centuries. That's a lie. I tied my finger on the trigger. That's a lie. I tied my finger on the trigger. Honey, put the crossbow down. A woman's voice came from behind me. I recognized it immediately. Grandma? I choked out the word. I thought he killed you. No, she shook his head. He saved me. She smiled while she was showing her fangs. And you should call me Mrs. Claus now. Being an Instacart shopper pays decent money for a side gig. The downside is the part where you do someone else's shopping for them. Lug it back to their house and then repeat the process. Honestly, I don't get why these customers bearing disabilities can't just do it themselves. What bunch of lazy old gits refuse to get off their couches and get their hands dirty carrying a shopping bag? Like the deliveries before, I walk into the mall's grocery store and open the Instacart app to see what I'm picking up today. One by one, I start collecting items, the first being some plastic zip ties and duct tape. The next item is some bleach, which I grabbed from the cleaning aisle, along with latex gloves from the list. Checking the app again, I retrieve 2 more products, a sharp knife and hacksaw. When I see that the following items are garbage bags and a shovel, alarm bells start going off in my head. Setting the suspicious items into the cart, I sense the uncomfortable stares from shoppers around me. I awkwardly double-check every shady item on the app to make sure I've got everything. Gasoline, check. Sledgehammer, check. Rat poison, check. Finally, I bring my ridiculous, questionable cart to the cashier to pay and get this over with. Sir, can I ask what you intend on using these for? The cashier winces, watching me place each ominous purchase on the counter. Look, I know how this looks, but this stuff isn't for me. I'm an Instacart delivery guy, I tried to explain. Unfortunately, I've already attracted the attention of 2 mall security guards stationed outside. They take one look at my basket and immediately pull me aside for questioning. 30 minutes later, mall security finally releases me from my handcuffs, apologizing for the misunderstanding, annoyed at what must have clearly been a prank on my expense. I open the Instacart app, ready to tear the Instacart customer a new one, except they've just sent me a new message. Thanks for keeping the mall security guys accompanied for me. Couldn't have killed all these shoppers today without you. Attached to the message from Instacart shopper 13825 is a photo of his bloody hands giving a thumbs up. In front of a mall entrance, he was here, in the building with me, the whole time I was shopping and detained. All this time I suspected the guy ordering these items was a killer, and I was right. But he didn't need them to get away with murder. And he didn't need an Instacart delivery man. He needed a poor smug to distract the security guards while he killed innocent mall-goers. I was wrong that Instacart customers are all lazy. Slackers that don't get their hands dirty. Because this one gets his hands dirty. I shouldn't have watched her for so long. But how could I not? Her laugh, bright and guarded, full of life, her eyes deep, with just enough mystery to pull you in. Her hair, blonde, soft, and effortlessly perfect. I watched her for so long, memorized every curve of her smile. There is warmth in her smile I cannot describe, warmth I cannot feel. I was a fool. I knew that, but I couldn't stop myself. At first, it was innocent, or at least I told myself it was. A glance here, a stolen moment there. She walked past and I followed, not too close, just enough to see where she went. I watched her at the cafe, the park, her balcony. At sunset, I watched and followed her everywhere. She never saw me. Since I was so busy with my job, I couldn't actively follow her all the time. I never meant to grow so attached, never meant to crave her closeness as I did. And oh, how I deprived myself for it. When he appeared, a stranger at first, I felt the shift. He was nothing extraordinary, but he made her smile. More than once, more than I ever could. I tried to ignore him. He'd soon be gone from her life, and it will only be me and her again. He didn't. I watched as they grew closer. She shared with him the laugh I thought was mine. She let him hold her hand, brush stray hairs from her face. I hated him. I envied him. I could never be what he was to her, never hold her the way he did, never whisper words into her ear that made her cheeks flush. A year passed, a year of torment, a year of their love blossoming, the very love and connection for which I so desperately yearned for. Then, the proposal. I saw it all. The moonlit beach, the way he knelt, the way her hands flew to her mouth, trembling with joy. She said yes, of course. The warm atmosphere turned bitterly cold as he dropped dead. I took his life. His time had come. He had years, decades left to live, but I reached into the thread of his existence and severed it. She cried. Oh, how she cried. Her anguish tore through the air like a blade. I'd imagine her mourning him. She'll grieve, but not for long. Then it'll just be us again. The air around me thickened. Oh, the realization was instant. I'd gone against the natural order. The thread of life was not supposed to be severed yet. Its wings covered the entire horizon as it descended. The extinguisher. So, this is what humans feel when I come for them. Fear. You who held dominance over the mortal plane, dared to taint the defined weave of existence. Every word shook the very fiber of my being. There is no mercy for such defiance. Wait, I pleaded, but the sword of requisition was already drawn.
I'm a real person. I'm literally standing in front of you, I screamed at the woman from the bank, her face full of, I really don't give a fuck. Please calm down, ma'am. I don't deserve to be spoken to like you don't deserve. Let me tell you what I've been through. I began listening. First, my debit card stops working. I thought it was a glitch, so I called customer service. They said my account doesn't exist. My life savings gone. Then, the DMV wouldn't renew my license because they couldn't find my file. They even accused me of forging it. Oh, and when I went to the hospital for my allergies, no record of me, not even in filing. Now you're telling me I don't have an account here either. The woman's eyebrows raised slightly, but not in sympathy. She looked down at her computer, clicking aimlessly. "Ma'am," she said, with a tone that scraped across my nerves. "If there's no record, there's no record. Maybe you've made a mistake." A mistake? A mistake. I'd heard that a dozen times now from clerks, officials, even old friends who suddenly pretend they didn't know me. I slammed my fist on the counter. "Do I look like a mistake to you?" "Security," she called dryly, lifting the phone. I stumbled out before they could haul me away. The streets felt different somehow. People passed by like they didn't even see me. A woman on her phone bumped my shoulder. "Hey," I snapped, but she didn't turn, didn't even flinch. I checked my phone. Still no service. The contacts list was empty except for one name I hadn't added. Alex. I didn't know an Alex. I tapped it anyway, and the screen blinked. Before I could process, a low hum filled my ears, followed by a flat voice. "You are aware now." Who the fuck? What the fuck? Who is this? "This is simply a correction." I froze. The air felt heavier, and I noticed something. A subtle shimmer at the edges of my vision, almost like heat waves. "What?" I whispered. "You have breached your context. The system is correcting itself." "What? I don't understand." "You are just data. A projection within the framework. Useful once. Now you're redundant." I staggered backward, gripping the edge of the lamppost for balance. The shimmer intensified, distorting the world around me. The child's laughter warped into static. The sky seemed to pulse unnaturally. "No," I muttered. "I'm real. I'm a real person. You're trying to gaslight me. This is a joke or something, or..." "The correction has begun." The voice cut in, and the line went dead. I turned to run, but my legs felt unresponsive. As I passed reflective windows, I caught glimpses of myself, flickering, translucent, and sort of pixelated. I reached out, desperate, as my hand crumbled into nothing. My world dimmed with a final echo. Correction complete. And no one knows any different. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" My husband greeted me after getting home from a long day of work. "It was fine," I said, revealing a bouquet of flowers. "Are those for me?" my husband asked, confused. "I thought we could deliver them together." "Deliver them?" "Yeah, to your late wife's grave." My husband couldn't hide the shock on his face. "How'd you find out?" My husband took the flowers from me. I pulled out a receipt for a burial plot. "I went to the cemetery, Paul. You bought the grave next to her. I knew you were married before, but you never said she died. I don't like to talk about it. It was sudden." I crumpled up the receipt. I wasn't sure if I wanted to bring up the real reason I was angry. I don't mind that my husband lied about his late wife passing away. It was probably none of my business. No. What made me upset was that he wanted to be buried next to her and not me. You don't have to talk about it if you're not ready, but I want you to know that I will always be here to listen. Why don't we take the first step and deliver these? I pointed to the flowers. Yeah, I like that, my husband said. We got in the car and drove to the cemetery together. My husband walked me to his late wife's grave, only the burial plot next to it had been recently dug out. I wonder why they dug it up. I laughed and smiled at my husband. You plan on dying anytime soon? My husband pulled out a blackjack from his pocket and struck me in the back of the head. I didn't buy it for me. Jennifer Williams sat in her office, reading mail and doing payroll. She wished she didn't have to pay the losers who worked for her. But such was the cost of running a business. She opened the envelope absent-mindedly while she worked. Then she got up and left her store and walked into traffic, killed immediately by a speeding semi. She wasn't missed. Mike Warren came home from his late shift. A dead-end warehouse job wasn't what he had in mind for his life. He felt like he was going nowhere. At least those other losers treated him with respect he deserved. They'd pay if they didn't. He opened his mail while heating up dinner, meatloaf tonight. Then he opened his 5th floor window and jumped to the pavement below. Anna Stinson entered the apartment she shared with her roommate. She sighed. It was a disaster, as always. She wished her roommate would clean, but it was what she could afford. She knew she should be grateful. Many of her classmates didn't have apartments at all. She kicked off her heels, sat on the couch, and went through her mail. More bills. Then she went to the bathroom, filled the bathtub with water, and submerged her head until she drowned. Her roommate would find her. She had to clean up the mess. Ethan Thompson watched the students leave the classroom, as usual. They understood nothing except how to make excuses. Always excuses. They were lazy and entitled. None of them deserved to pass. He pursued his correspondence, expecting another entitled parent demanding special treatment for their little angel. After a moment, he picked up a pencil and shoved it through his eye and into his brain. Blood dripped down onto the essay beneath him like red ink. Clarissa Wallace turned off the news in her office. She canceled her remaining appointments for the day to appreciate this moment. She reviewed her notepad. Jennifer Williams. Boss who fired you. Trigger word. Titanium. Dead. Mike Warren. Classmate who bullied you. Trigger word. Carnage. Dead. Anna Stinson. Girlfriend who dumped you. Trigger word. Dove. Dead. Ethan Thompson. Teacher who failed you. Trigger word. Crimson. Dead. She checked off the last name and pulled out the picture of her brother. Staring at it, she lit a flame under the list, watching it burn and remembering all of the sessions she held as she planted the needed post-hypnotic suggestions. The years of school, the months of planning, all worth it. All of the people who contributed to her brother's suicide were all dead. All except one. She kissed the picture, then rose and walked to her office mirror. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you, Mikey. I'm sorry I didn't see how much pain you were in. I hope you can forgive me. Then she looked into her own eyes, raised the gun, and said the final trigger word. Midnight. Dr. Sophia Solis sat at her observatory computer, an image of the sun on the screen before her. At first, the anomalies had been dismissed as asteroids or wayward flotsam, specks against the vast infinity. But as the days passed, those specks multiplied, their movements disturbingly deliberate, their patterns too intricate for chance. What are they doing? Sophie thought, as she watched the swarm grow denser by the hour. It started subtly, a slight dimmer of sunlight that most people shrugged off, but within a week the brightness of the sun dropped noticeably. Plants began to wither. The mornings carried a chill. The world's governments crumbled for answers, all converging on the same grim conclusion. Weapons were launched. Lasers, nuclear payloads, anything and everything the Earth's nations could muster. All advances vanished into smoke before reaching the swarm. The objects ignored Earth's feeble retaliation, their purpose unyielding and incomprehensive. Within a month, daylight had faded to a muted twilight. Crops failed, global temperatures plummeted, and panic swept across the globe. Governments collapsed as riots erupted in frozen cities. Sophia's observatory became her fortress, its starving generators barely keeping the lights on. Every day, she would stand at her console for hours, watching the constructs at their work. They moved with grace, each piece of machinery fitting together like parts of some cosmic jigsaw. Sophie could almost admire them, had they not earned humanity's extinction. Her mind wandered in the final days, consumed by questions she would never answer. Had they seen us? Did they even notice this tiny blue dot? Or were we as invisible as ants underfoot? She wanted to hate them, to curse them, but she could not. To them, the sun was not a god or a giver of life. It was their fuel. And humanity? Collateral. On the last day, Sophie sat alone in her observatory. The sun was replaced by an abyss, black disk encircled by shimmering machinery. As the generators sputtered and died, plunging her into darkness, she scribbled her final thoughts on the notebook. They came from parts unknown, bringing no malice, no warning, only hunger. The sun was our life, our warmth, and our guardian. Now it is theirs. We search the heavens looking for others, but we're blind to what might be searching for us. She set the notebook aside and sat back in the numbing cold, her breath hanging in the air like ghostly ribbons. The dark felt alive now, pressing in on her with a weight that felt almost comforting. Had they ever looked at her solar system? She wondered. At Earth. Somehow she doubted it. To them, humanity was less than an afterthought. For the first time, Sophie smiled, a grim and fragile thing. There was solace in insignificance, after all. As the cold claimed her, her final thoughts slipped into the void, like a star lost to the black abyss.